My name is Cynthia Linkas. You know me as Cindy, and you know me as a singer, not a writer. I've been in the choir 45 years, take or leave a few years here and there. Long time at Christ Church. So, stories are so important to all of us. I think we get the truth from stories in a way we don't any other way. We all have favorite stories in us that informed us. I feel truly that way, and I went in high school. I'm raised Roman Catholic, and in high school my parents decided that I was a little too wild and they needed to send me to the convent school of the Order of Nuns where I was growing up. I was growing up with these nuns in a Roman Catholic little community. They thought, well, we'll send her to the convent school. And they sent my sister first because she wasn't doing so hot either. So they sent her and they sent me. So this is based on a true story, but I have to say, I exaggerate a lot, and this is really fiction, truly. I mean, it's based on a lot of my own experiences, and any time during this talk that you want to ask me anything, just raise your hand and or give a shout out, because sometimes I'm going to be reading from the book. The other thing I wanted you to know is I was going to bring a lot of books, and I also have a book of poetry. I forgot them. So too bad for me. But anyway, I'm sure if you want one, you can let me know. So the recurring themes of my life as a writer and believer are God's presence and absence in our human existence. Burning question. Ask Judy Riggs, she's in my Bible study with me, and I'm still asking these, and ask Kathy, I'm still asking the same questions. So there it is. So I'm going to be asking them through my fictional characters here. And secondly, a vision of the inexhaustible love, transcending all limits of our human existence. All errors, all religions, and even heaven and hell. Transcending all limits. Inexhaustible love of Jesus Christ. And hopefully that will come clear. I'm not going to preach, but I'm going to read you some of my book and tell you about these characters. So setting the scene, two women are struggling to subsume themselves into a life of sacredness and vows. The nun, Sister Philippe, is 23 years old, and she has been sent back to this convent from a life. She's young, she's 23. She's already a nun. She's taken the 3-year vows. She's taken the first year vows and so forth. She's about to take final vows, and they brought her back here. She had been in college, their college, the nuns' college, but now she's back. And Janie. So this is Sister Philippe and Janie, and I'm going to call Sister Philippe Philippe. I do that in the book too. So it's Philippe and Janie. Janie is in this school. She's had a good experience of God, a warm, sweet experience of God as a child. And now she's in this place where all the liturgy and rules and asceticism and all of the trappings of religion are driving her crazy, because she would love to know that God is real. She wants to know that God is real. She can't find a real God. Now, mind you, she's 17, so keep that in mind. She's young, but her questions are real questions. So I'm going to quote Alan Feldman, who was my poetry teacher many, many years ago, and he has read this book. He's a great supporter and a lover of poetry, and he says that poetry in this book means so much in its enormous gravitational pull that poetry explodes or erupts in this story often, and that this goes back in historical time. It's 1964, But it goes back to that period of earnest searching that may have been the youth of every one of us, and probably was the youth of every one of us, that secret, that earnest searching, male or female, Catholic or otherwise. So what I was after in this book, characters on the page that breathe and that are real to you and that you want to know what happens to them and what happened and what is happening to them even now, even though they're not real. This is what I was after. And so it was 1964, 1965 academic year, the final year of the momentous Second Vatican Council in the Roman Catholic Church. The Second Vatican Council was he is a saint, but Pope John XXIII, who opened up everything in the church, wanted to make everything real for people in the pew, decided that the Latin Mass could exist, but that he would prefer that everybody say the Mass in the vernacular, so that which means their own language, so that they can understand it and pray it with more vitality and so forth. And what also happened, well, I'll tell you later what also happened. So I'm looking at two themes: the vows to God. What is a vow? Does God care? What happens in our sin? We've made a vow, can't keep it, transgress it. I'm looking at that because this kid came into this situation with women all around her who are dressed in black, who've given God vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Think about that. Poverty, chastity, and obedience, lifetime. And she's like, does God really, who does this? Why are they doing this? Is this really what God wants? And how, and can they live? Can they live? So, and swirling around these two are nuns and girls. They're difficult, they're complicated, they're funny. Cats. Charlotte Divine is her name, is a wry, worldly friend who's tethering them all to reality, all the girls. And then Janie's boyfriend, Michael, waits for her over the high wall. So this is really keeping her going. He's out there, he loves her, well, he likes her. They're kids, right? So this is history now. Let's set the scene. Black and white of habits, girls' blue uniforms. Hundreds of pink carnations gracing the chapel on the nights that they sit with the golden jeweled monstrous on First Fridays. The monstrous was this golden thing and the Eucharist was in the middle. And they would sit on First Fridays all night in groups with the pink carnations, overwhelming. Saints' Day processions snaking 2 by 2 through the orchard, the climbing of a ladder to crown the Virgin on May Day. One kid goes up the ladder, and it happens in the story. The dormitory, 99 cells with white curtains, beds, and their crucifixes lined up like graves on these beds. That's how they lived. Bats in the attic, where they keep their trunks, and they have to go up there every night to get a fresh blouse. I just want you to feel this place. Incense from the wooden choir loft and the nuns' modal chants, Latin Mass, daily Eucharist, and so forth. So against this backdrop of ancient Catholicism, the forbidden beckons. First of all, when Sister Philippe arrives, and she's an English teacher, she's learning to be an English teacher, she takes over the English class, which is what the Mother Superior wants her to do, and right away, they're supposed to do Tennyson. They've been given an assignment to study Tennyson, and she comes in and says, she's the new teacher. There they are. They're like whispering, who is this teacher? And this is the other thing. The nuns disappeared. Nobody ever knew where they went. One nun was there one day. The next day, she's not there anymore. Where did she go? Nobody talks about it. So this is what happened here. this English nun disappears. Sister Philippe is here. Rushing, Sister Philippe passed out copies of a poem she'd mimeographed on the old machine in the library. I covered my face with it. The purple-lettered copies smelled like fresh-baked bread. I loved their smooth gloss. Papers rustled and day girls buzzed about their plans for after school, but even they sat stunned when Sister Philippe began to read in a musical line of sound. Glory be to God for dappled things, for skies of couple color as a brinded cow. Who wrote this? Asked Jeanne d'Arc, hand in the air. What is your name? Said Sister Philippe. You're interrupting. I looked up and swallowed hard. For rose moles all in stipple upon trout that swim, she continued. I could see the trout, the brinded cow. Girls, Sister Philippe said, Gerard Manley Hopkins has broken all the rules. What do you think he is doing in these lines? I don't know, but I can see pictures, Suze mumbled. He is naming, nodded Sister Philippe, invoking the reality of the thing. He is calling forth. She read on. Fresh fire, cold chestnut falls, finch's wings, landscape plotted and pieced, fold, follow, and plow, and all trades, their gear and tackle and trim. Finch's wings, rose moles, chestnut falls, and this poem was about God? The same old God? How? I glanced at Suze, whose lips were parted, and Katz, who looked back at me, bemused. We will memorize the poem, the nun was saying. Hopkins takes effort in seeing girls. He sees things differently from the rest of us. Her eyes snapped in the coiffed face. Sometimes his meanings are obscured, she continued, and need interpretation, which bothers some readers, but with Hopkins, all our efforts will explode into meaning the more we delve to understand. I would love to go on with that class, but I have other things to read to you. That's the beginning. So Janie is experiencing something brand new there about God, and all she wants is God, and she doesn't know who he is, and she's not finding him. So then, Sister Philippe has just arrived, and her closest friend from the novitiate, they have a time together in white veils for a year, and they live together, and the novice master teaches them how to become a nun, what it is going to be a nun. And she's in this year with a sister whose name is Germaine, and her real name is Claire, and Sister Jacinta. So now that Philippe is back in this place, she's back there, and the other two are there also. And Philippe discovers that Sister Germaine is very, very ill. She has lupus, and now she's contracted pneumonia. She's only 23, just like Sister Philippe, and Philippe is devastated. So Sister Germaine is still there. She's still alive. She's dying, but she's there. And she brings Sister Philippe and Sister Jacinta to the cellar, to a secret room. So Philippe is devastated, but Germaine won't talk about it. She just says, come with me. But you gave up your art for God. You made art after all. All around the cramped cellar room were canvases, paintings of such deep color. I stood very still. Scenes from the gospel, Nathaniel in the tree, the raising of Lazarus, the prodigal son, the convent hill and lake, edgy portraits of children and animals, ordinary creatures. Just look, Sister Germaine said. The room was damp with dull walls and no windows, but everywhere was color and light in the paintings. Germaine found a brighter lamp and leaned it toward the mosaic of a city, about 4 foot square. Bits of color were embedded in stone, unusual and intense. Close up, Its hundreds of uneven tiles created texture, grain, and the farther we stepped away from the grain, the more powerfully the images emerged. Studded buildings, an enormous, intricate wall across the middle, angel standing guard, and many-colored gates. Near the mosaic was tacked up, on yellow paper, in a round, wide hand, scripture verses from the Apocalypse, chapter 21. Sister Germaine read in a soft voice. "And I saw the holy city of Jerusalem," her voice strained with feeling, "coming down out of heaven from God, and the city shone. And all about a great high wall, 12 gates and 12 angels, and its wall was built of jasper, while the city itself was of pure gold, bright as clear glass, jewels of every kind, the first being jasper, the second turquoise, the third chalcedony." I gazed at Sister Germaine and suddenly saw her, skin and bones in the habit that hid everything. Her flush was not healthy, but there was something new in her tone. Was it wonder? She was a consummate artist. We thought she had given this up for God, which, by the way, the nuns aren't going to be artists. This is clear when they enter, right? This is highly unusual that she's in this basement. And there was a list in her rounded hand I read out loud in astonishment. Jasper, red-brown quartz, ancient times, green. Turquoise, mix of blue and green. Chalcedony, milky grayish. Emerald, rare green. Clear, deep. Sardonyx, kind of onyx. Brown, red. Chrysolite, olive green. Beryl, blue or rose, opaque. Topaz, transparent yellow. Are you seeing this in the mosaic? Are you seeing it? You seeing the colors? Jacinth, how do you say that? Jacinth, reddish brown. Chrysoprase, apple green. Amethyst, violet. Our eyes went back and forth, searching each color in the mosaic. How could we not know this? I held on to a table nearby. You created every color in this passage. Sister Germaine's eyes fluttered a wan smile. She breathed a choke and coughed. "There's where I fired the tiles," she said, pointing to a small kiln, "and I mixed the glazes here." She swept her hand over the table. Jacinta's eyes were round. I was leveled. And Mère is the Mother Superior. This is a French school, by the way, I forgot to tell you that. And Mère had allowed it, encouraged it, and bought the materials. But we thought Mère arranged it. Here is where I've lived. Thanks be to God. I have known wondrous amounts of grace. I've made my art. Her grainy voice broke my heart. We stepped away from the city, its walls, its angels with their onyx eyes. We moved to Sister Germaine, one on either side of her, and held her in our arms. She leaned her head. We were forbidden to touch each other. Today, that rule was irrelevant. So the nun dies, and the girls and nuns, this is the custom in the convent, have to wake her, sit by her, the dead nun, all day and all night for 3 days and nights. And the girls have not experienced this particular set of girls. This is a 75-year-old convent school, but the girls haven't had to do this yet, and they have to do it now. And they're freaked out. They're all freaked out about this wake, and especially in the night. And coming down, they're 2 by 2. They're going to come down 2 by 2 and sit with this dead nun. And they don't want to do it. And it also is kind of, it's freaky and it's awful, and it kind of represents for them all of the things about this experience here, living sort of in a prison and having strictures and limits and no freedom and all that. It's kind of representing all of that for them. And I'm not going to read that part. I'm sorry, I don't have time. When they come in, when they come down 2 by 2 and sit with the dead nun, but they break open. 5 friends decide, okay, we're going to get something out of this. We're going to be up in the night. We're going to raid the kitchen. Also something nobody has ever done in this school. So they raid the kitchen. They come down 2 in the morning, and then some other ones wait. Anyway, 5 friends, and here they are raiding the kitchen. So cats pushed into another cupboard. Don't they hide sweets? She grumbled. Ugh, flour, oatmeal, nothing but horse hay. Wait a minute. She appeared with a large, squat jar of honey and placed it on the counter. For a moment, we all gazed at the thick gold glinting in the faint light. Then she unscrewed with the lid and dipped a finger in. Whoa, what do you know? She said with glee, sucking on the tip of her index finger. We gathered around, dipping into the rich amber liquid, placing it shyly on our tongues. The nun's honey, the nun's nectar, exclaimed Suze, her voice deep and warm. For a second, the drop of honey sat on my tongue, unaccustomed to delight, taste buds sluggish. I closed my mouth. The sharp sting of sweetness spread up the back of my throat and into my ears. This is the night the Lord hath made, Kat sang. This is the land of milk and honey, Em sang. By the way, want me to sing it? No. She and Suze cha-cha'd around the kitchen, dipping and singing as they went. Jeanne d'Arc plunged in too deep, and then it dribbled down her arm. I'm drunk, I can't stop. Em licked her fingers. I teased myself by darting my tongue in and out of a little pool in my hand. Bits of my hair got into it by mistake. I licked these strands too, and then somehow it escaped onto my wrist, the hairs on my arm. Cats twirled around the jar like a nymph. The door opened. We gasped. Sister Philippe stood in the doorway. So I want to just say before I continue that these scenes to me of, I'm just going to share this with you because you're all my loves, and when I do a reading of this at the bookshop at Beverly Farms, I'm probably not going to say this. But to you I'm going to say, God is so present in this place. Whether he's present, he, she, it, God is present in the way that we expect, in the Eucharist when we're there in the morning at 6 o'clock, or in those preachings that the girls receive from the nuns about how to live and how to be good. And some of them are really good. But to me, these scenes when they're in a terrible situation and suddenly, honey, or the nun is dying, art, okay, I'm not going to say anymore, but they came to me. I didn't, by the way, it's all fiction. I didn't experience anything good like this in the convent school. I mean, I did a few things, but this is fiction. Okay, so the Mother Superior, Mère, her name is, Mother Superior, is a wonderful character. She really helps Philippe. Philippe is trying to decide, should I take vows, should I not take vows? Final vows. She's struggling against the lack of freedom. She's an athlete in that habit. She always overdoes it. She toboggans on a winter day. She toboggans with the girls, and they go too fast, and she's very competitive. And she crashes into a tree with her toboggan and the 2 other nuns on her toboggan, and one of them rolls off and breaks her leg. So Sister Philippe is in trouble a lot with this, wanting to know, should I actually do this? Am I really cut out for this? And so the title of the book is Vows. And what are the vows? What does that look like for a nun? to take vows. And by the way, when I was bringing this book out, I thought, well, nobody's going to want to read this. It's about nuns. And then I thought, you know what? If you were given a really good, I think it's a really good story, by the way. It's a story. If you were given that story about a woman in a burqa, a bunch of women in burqas, and they're telling you what it's like to be in the burqa, and what they believe, and what their life is like, you might read it. So it's the same thing. This is human beings. And for me, it's very important. They're human beings who are searching for God. They're seeking God, our God. So this is the vows. November 25th, the clothing ceremony. Philippe has already done this clothing ceremony 3 years ago, but she's attending here. The girls are on a break, and she's attending this. Here's what it is. Mother Superior processed down the center aisle of the Sorrows Chapel. She carried a silver cross, her face and the wisps of hair that escaped her coif, white as snow. A bride followed her in a gown of lace tulle that outlined her curves, and through a starry veil, her black hair shone, long, loose, and free. Another bride streamed down the aisle, tipsy, in high heels, and another weaving, 6 in all, graceful in their bridal finery, tulle or satin, beaded, seed-pearled, long veils as wispy and fragile as spiders' webs. From up in the loft, choir loft, I closed my eyes. This is Sister Philippe now. I closed my eyes and remembered my own gown, sewn by Dodie, her sister, for first vows, a slender fitting silk with high neck and regal train. Sœur Robert lifted her hand. We were 5 nuns, and our full-bodied, Sœur Robert is the choir director. We were 5 nuns, and our full-bodied chant spun over the heads of visitors below. I risked a look at Jacinta, her soft gaze. The brides faced the altar side by side, their backs to the congregation. The bishop regarded them. While his acolytes removed his golden mitre, he lifted the aspersion and blessed the brides with holy water. 2 priests flanked him, and others milled about, swinging incense. Mare stood sentinel from the side altar, her elegant features wide open to this joy. Our chant eased to a long note of conclusion. The bishop intoned, "Qu'est-ce que vous voulez?" What do you seek? I love that question. What do they seek? This is the question I've been asking my whole life. The brides fell to their knees, their sponsor nuns fussing with the gowns as they went down. A murmur rippled through the congregation. My throat tightened. I seek grace and the habit of les sœurs de douleur de Marie, the women said in unison French, lilting and musical. I seek to renounce the world and all its snares, to follow Christ, to study his holy word, and to take the vows, obedience, chastity, poverty. Incense stung my eyes. It rose into the choir in burnt, pungent clouds. The bishop slipped a gold ring on each of the bride's 4th finger. The all-seeing eye of God with its curly eyelashes stared from a painting above the altar. And that thing was always staring at us, that all-seeing eye of God. A light fell through the stained glass windows in blocks of pale color over the brides. A thick pile of black habits had been placed before the statue of Mary. With deliberate gait, the bishop moved to the pile and sprinkled it with holy water. The habits had been sewn by their sponsors, who came forward now to usher the brides through the side door. My hand went to my coif. It was time for the cutting of their hair. A lump in my throat. I remembered standing in white, our downy tufts falling to the floor. Claire's the nun who died, and my jet black, Jeanette's blonde, Jacinta's carrot red, thick, soft piles around our feet. Our breasts were bound with long, flat cloths. The inner white garments were pulled over our heads, black habits, coiffs cinched tight. Couldn't you have us both somehow, whispers Skip. Now you need to know that Skip is Sister Philippe's long love. They were together as children in the town. They went all through grammar school together and high school together. And then she felt she needed to go into the convent, which is another story. So I'm not going to be able to tell you all of them. But she felt called to the convent and left it behind. But he has written her. She's saved letters of him. People have snuck letters in to her from him. And this is one of his questions. Couldn't you have us both somehow? I float away. I'm in a scorching hot field with two sisters. We keep silence while the rushing river sings. We pitch hay. Noon. We kneel and sing nones. Our lone voice in the field. We walk to the shade of the woods carrying satchels, hungry, hot, crusts of bread and cheese. We lie on the riverbank, pine needle carpet, reveries untouched, burning hot. Slowly, I unbutton my habit. I remove my work boots, stockings. Casually, my sisters follow. We release the pins of veils, pull off the frontispiece, unwind the wimple, remove the coif, then pull the habit up and over our heads. The inner tunic, peeling, unwrapping. We expose our we expose our skin. Remove undergarments until we stand. Breasts, bellies, mounds of soft hair, red gold and dark brown, faded tans of bygone summers, strong young limbs. We enter the pool, slip all the way under, cool, clear water over my skin, teeth, and tongue. My beloved God is in everything, pure water and smooth stone. When you were young, called the bishop, I startled. You could go where you wished, but now you will be led where you do not wish to go. Jesus' words to Peter. The new novices had returned to the altar. The bishop held a thatch of ropes over his arm and proceeded to tie one around the first nun's waist, called a cincture. My eyes tightened. He pulled the rope around a thick waist. Name this nun, the bishop said. Sir Edouard du Sacré-Cœur, said the sponsor, pinning the white veil to the novice's wimple. The novice fell on her face before the altar. Name this nun. Like bowling pins, they each fell in turn, one by one, onto their faces before the altar. Now the requiem is chanted, etc. I'm going to skip a little bit. The holy men bowed and recessed. The people stood in the lingering incense and also left. The altar boys extinguished the candles. The sanctuary candle burned on in its flaming presence. Blocks of honey-colored light streamed through the stained glass. Nuns filed out. Everyone filed out. The line of new nuns remained, prostrated before the altar, legs straight out, foreheads, noses flat against the stone, the new nun shoes peeking out from under the palls. I joined them in my heart, arms outstretched in the form of a cross, majestic black birds flying in formation on their journey to God.
Wow, you write so beautifully.
Thank you. Well, by the way, some of the stuff I made up. This scene I did not make up. This is exactly what happened to my nuns in this school in 1964 and before that. This is what happened to them. When they were taking vows, they dressed as brides, and this whole scene is true. I feel like I have to tell you that. So, any questions right now? Any questions?
I came in a little late, so I apologize. Were you a nun?
No, I never became a nun. I had no interest in becoming a nun. I just wanted God. By the way, I was becoming a Protestant in this school.
Oh, I see.
Pretty much. Like I really wanted to talk directly to God. And that was what I believed the Protestants could do. I didn't know at that point, but once I became a Protestant, I was like, whoa, this is fantastic. I don't need a priest. I can just, him and me, you know?
Yeah.
Personal Savior. I wanted that so much because I wanted the intimacy of this experience with my God, and I couldn't find it in this place. I always have to go through channels, prayers, and
Hierarchy.
definitely hierarchy. Bill, did you have a question?
I do. So, if I can adapt the bishop's question, what might we seek in our lives from the world that you've been inhabiting and have visualized for us so beautifully in your novel? Like nuns, we are Christians. Unlike the women in the burqas, but this world is in many ways foreign to us. As laity, as Christians, going about our lives, what can we employ? What virtues or habits or aspects of this world might we seek?
Good question. So I'll try to answer just really briefly. I asked all my questions in this book, all the questions that I have about faith. And you won't hear them all this morning, but I hope you buy it. I hope you read it. Bonhoeffer talks about community, and he wrote a whole book about that, about living together in community as Christians, and claimed, and I won't get it exactly, his quotes, but I read that book with the Bible study 30 years ago, and it really struck me that this community, although very flawed and really making errors and not knowing, it wasn't their fault, really. This was long tradition, right? They were trying to live in a community as Christians and shore each other up in the faith and help each other to understand God and all of those things that Bonhoeffer says, if you don't meet God in your brother, you're not going to meet him. And that living in community with Christians is so important. It's the whole story of our human life. In our human life here on earth, that's where we're going to be with God. I said a minute ago the want me and God thing is really important, yes, but am I making any sense? I wanted to look at this community after I left it, a long time after I left it, because I felt there was something going on here that was really, really important about God. Now, we can't go, putting habits on and start doing stuff like that. And I don't think, another question I was asking is, does God really care which form of this we take, as long as it's the true God, and as long as our community is really faithful in loving each other and shoring each other up and being there? I don't think God cares. I don't. This is me now. I think God honored this. This was something that was going on. And by the way, by the end of my book, I shouldn't skip ahead like this, but I'm not going to tell you the very, very end because I want you to read it. But by the end of the book, Vatican II is really upon us. Sister Philippe is still struggling to figure out if she should take her vows. By then, she's met her former lover in the grotto. Her brother has snuck him in, kind of sabotaged her in a way. She ends up with him. She still loves him. her feelings just totally overwhelm her. Anyway, there's a lot going on, but at the very, very end, it's Vatican II is upon us. There is something called Perfecte Caritatis as a part of that encyclical, where the nuns are being asked to vote together as communities and vote to stay in convents and stay in the habit, or leave the convents and dress in street clothes and live in 2s and 3s in apartments to be more relevant to Christians, to Catholics. And that's a whole other story, by the way. I'm not going to try to tell you that story. But at the end, that is what's happening to these girls and women and nuns. And I'll tell you, not in this story, but half of the nuns voted to leave and left. No more nuns. Half of them voted to adopt street clothes and serve God that way. But this story is history. I think there might be some convents still in Europe. There might be a couple here, and I don't even know about them. I don't know where this exists. Because this was a revolution in this way of serving God. It ended. And, you know, I challenge you to tell me where there's a nun or a convent today here in the States. I know that Episcopal nuns live together, you know, and all, but I'm talking about this strict life, this traditional life. So that ended, this whole thing ended because of the Roman Catholic encyclical. So there is fun here too. It's not all serious, it's very deadly serious here. A thing happens, and I think I just want to explain it to you, and then I'll read you a passage. So Sister Philippe meets her lover in the grotto. You have the scene here. I'm not going to read it. They kiss. She's stirred up, and it's too much, because she has all these other questions. She needs to know, she loves God passionately, and that's why I love these characters, because there's a lot of passion here. And she decides she has to take on mortification of the flesh in order to figure this out. Because it's her body that's betraying her. And this is true. And there's a whole dichotomy here of the flesh, the soul, and the body. You know, back to Aristotle, back to St. Jerome. It's a Roman Catholic heresy. Anyway, it's very, very real, and it's very real for all of us humans. It's not just Roman Catholicism that got it wrong. We all got it wrong at some point in our lives. Even St. Francis calls the body my mule, my ass. I have to carry this stupid thing around because my soul is God's, and I don't even want this body. And then, in fact, if you read Francis, he really is terrible to his body. And a lot of the saints that we read are horrible to their bodies. So this dichotomy still exists today. So that's what Philippe was going through. And this was possible at this, I did research about this. This is possible at this time in the Roman Catholic Church because the saints all did it. So she writes to the Carmelites, and they have a little business where they make these instruments of torture available for mortification. In fact, read it. It's really. So Sister Philippe puts these chains on her thighs, and they pierce, and there's blood. She has to wear them for 3 days and 3 nights. This 3 keeps coming up in here. And she gets spiritual direction for this. There's a priest involved, etc. So she does it. And she's hoping that she does this. In her mind, she's thinking she's doing it for Christ. It's really tough to read. She happens to be in the dorm. She's the course mistress of the girls now. That's a long story too. But anyway, she's their course mistress, no longer their English teacher. She climbs a ladder and she's changing the light bulb in the dorm, and Janie comes in, she forgot a book. Philippe says, hold the ladder, I've got to get this done, and she's trying to get it done. And Janie's, get the flashlight, shine it up here. Anyway, long story short, Janie sees, she loses her balance, her legs go out, Janie sees the chains on her mentor's legs. And this is huge upheaval for Janie. She doesn't say anything. She gets out of there as fast as she can. She doesn't know what to think of this. She doesn't want anything to do with this. But she loves this person. And this person has given her her first experience of the real living God. So what is she going to do? She realizes, okay, I have to get into the nuns' library. It's forbidden for girls. But I want to read what she's doing. I have to read, and I don't have any other way to do that. By the way, can't look it up on Google. So she all crazy. She goes to the laundry right away, the nuns' laundry, tiptoes down there, takes care of, the girls are going to tell Philippe she's praying. She goes down there, steals a habit, because you can't go in to the nuns' library without a habit. She's not going to be able to read in there. Steals a habit, comes out with the habit. It's kind of a scary scene because the nuns are still in there ironing their whites. But anyway, she gets the habit. She comes out, and I'm going to read you this because she's dressed in the habit. She hurries to the nuns' library. On the way, she sees a statue, and this was a whole thing too. The statues are there, and have you ever seen statues of Mary or St. Anthony or anything? Their fingers are like this a lot of time. Just their fingers. And there's notes in there, in this place. And the notes are prayers and petitions, mostly written by nuns, but you don't know, but this is the nuns. So Janie's dressed in a habit. She's really kind of losing it. And she's always been curious about these notes. She grabs them. She's going to the library. She grabs the notes, puts them in her pocket. Just curiosity. I'm a nun now. I might as well do fun things. So she gets the notes, goes in the library, finds out, you had to pay for the things. She sent away. It was Carmelite, etc. So Janie finds all that out. But I have to read you this because it's when she, okay, just give me a second. So she's stolen the habit. She's in the bathroom. She's about to put it on. Has no idea how to put it on. In the bathroom stall, still trembling, I examined everything. Sweet cloth, pressed smooth, inner and outer layers, light, dark. I buried my face. Pulling off my uniform, I stood shivering in my underwear, protesting the cold. I held the huge brassiere by its strap, a fortress. I stashed my uniform and lifted my white undergarment, jumping from foot to foot. How long? Till someone missed me. There was no mirror. I grabbed pins out of my mouth, fastened. My scalp itched. The wimple hid my forehead, ears, contours of cheeks, and chin. The black serge habit slipped over my wimpled head. Against it, my body felt new. The black frontispiece tied in black and fell to the waist, a crucifix usually over it. I wrapped the cincture around my waist. I remembered the words of Jesus to the apostles. Now you will be led where you do not wish to go. The black veil pinned into place reached to the back of my knees, and I remembered the novices lying on their faces before the altar. I stood in the bathroom stall and breathed in the smells: bleach, starch, naphtha, sweat. I was disappearing. Hidden, whole, holy, I sank into Philippe. So this was a nun. I had put her on so easily. And if I kept her on, no one would ever know, no one would ever wonder at me again. They'd say, I know who she is. I leaned against the door, feeling the unbending metal. I wouldn't have to search anymore or find a way to live what I wanted so much to believe, or defend it or deny it. Warmth and softness. Body, bread, poems, surrender. I was inside. So it's these habits. Some of them are taking them off, some of them are putting them on. I mean, it's this. And to me, it's truly our experience of Christ. And I'll say more about that in a minute. So she's got the notes, she's learned what Philippe is doing, etc. So then, Sister Philippe finds her in the orchard. That's a whole scene where she asks her what she's been doing and why, and yeah, I kind of lost my place here. Any other questions while I look?
So, religious life is perceived in 2024 through a prism of deep skepticism and horrible events which have been revealed. How did our anxiety in the face of those horrors influence the way that you depicted the religious life of this moment 60 years ago?
Not sure I get your question. So what happened?
We've lived through scandals in the Catholic Church, which have included many people, some of them within monasteries and convents, and some of them coming out of ordained ministry and into schools, where in particular young people have been abused in many ways. We all have lived with that as a fact of history. You are writing a novel embedded in a place and time 60 years ago, before most people knew that horror. How have you, as a writer, wrestled with that evil as you construct an environment in which you are, I believe, largely celebrating good?
Yeah, it's what I said in the beginning, the very beginning. My goal was, always is, that the transcendent love of God, of Jesus Christ, the indescribable love, is always there in evil places, in hell, I said, in heaven, in our experiences. It is always there. That's our faith. That's what we believe. I set out to write what happened to me in this convent school many years ago, and it was pretty tough. It was pretty rough. It is something that you would consider today to be child abuse, in a way, young people abuse. I mean, the food was terrible. It was really not a life. My parents had no choice. That's a whole other story if you want to know why they sent me to a school like this. But, and yet, I experienced incredible teaching. They taught me to write. It was very hard, a lot of discipline, but it forged a person in me and in my friends that couldn't have been forged any other way. And this is just my unique story. Everybody has stories like this. You know, people who've been in the army, or people, you know, this is just my story. And what I ended up saying was that, no, Jesus Christ, if you're seeking him, you're going to find him. Even in a place where it just seems like everybody's got it wrong, or that it's too hard, or whatever. Am I answering it?
Perhaps it's an unfair question to ask,
Well,
and it takes
you know,
more time than we've got.
Here's the thing. To discuss this is one thing. To experience it in a book, in a novel, in a story is another. And what I hoped was that my readers would experience Jesus Christ in these scenes, these breakout scenes. Here's the chains. Here's this kid putting on the habit and experiencing God. That's the only thing I can say. She experiences God. She's looking for what this wrong is, and she's experiencing God, and it happens over and over again. I have to hurry up because we only have 5 minutes. So Janie takes the notes, she reads them, and it's what I've read to you about how Philippe took her habit off and went in the pool with her friends. She didn't think it was a sin. Philippe didn't think it was a sin. That was her body. She was hot. She went in the pool. But she wrote it as, she confessed it to God as something she shouldn't have done, a transgression or whatever. Janie reads it, and then she confesses all this to Philippe. They're in the bathroom, up in the dorm. Everybody else is asleep. Janie tells her everything that she's done. Stole the habit, stole the notes, saw the chains, saw you in the grotto with your lover, all these things. Philippe slaps her across the face. Slaps her across the face. And Janie is devastated. And they part, and Janie feels she'll never be forgiven. At the end of the story, she is forgiven. And by the way, I didn't read you anything about the roller palace. The roller palace is really key to this story, and I'm sorry I left it out. But this happened to me. These nuns let these girls go to a roller palace across the lake. You could see it from the dorm window. There it is, closed to the public. They call the man who lets them skate there the bad Catholic, buying his way into heaven. They let the girls come and skate there. And the nuns, of course, accompany them, and some of them transgress and skate like the athletes that they are. And it's wondrous image all through this book that they skate at this roller palace. And at the end of the story, they go to the roller palace for the last time. They're about to graduate in one day, and Janie, they're all there, and Sister Philippe has her skates on, but she's not skating. Everybody's skating, and it's all fantastic. It's the end. And Janie bumps into Sister Philippe and says, "I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to hurt you." And Sister Philippe doesn't say a word, just grabs her hand and skates her out onto the floor and just skates with her. And at the very end, lets her hand go, and she's free. That's my idea of forgiveness. And then there's epilogues. And the roller palace burns down right at the very end. So thank you so much for being a wonderful group. I didn't know what to expect here. I've never done this before. I would rather sing to you than do this. Truly, truly. And by the way, I went there as a singer. This is just my story. I went to this school as a singer. I sang when I was young. I did all kinds of singing. Went there. The nuns said, "We don't want to hear your voice. You have to blend in with all the other girls and the nuns." For 4 years, they never let me sing a solo. They never let me sing anything except blend. That was their way of taking me down a peg. And that's why nobody sings in here. Janie doesn't sing. There's nothing about being a soloist or a singer. because I still feel that to this day. That discipline was, okay. Thanks.